We begin with Africa. Scientists studying the new monkeypox strain in the Democratic Republic of Congo says they notice it's changing faster than expected and often in areas where experts lack funding and equipment. This complicates the response to the virus, which has been a public health problem in Africa since 1970. The new strain Clade 1B is a mutated version of Clade 1 of infections, reveals a mutation called apolipoprotein B editing complex 3, which can accelerate viral evolution. Multiple outbreaks are complicating the response. Mutated Clade 1B and 2B of monkeypox, a sexually transmitted disease, is increasing in Congo due to deforestation and bushmeat consumption. The virus can spread through close contact with infected individuals, particularly among children. Children, pregnant women, and those with weakened immune systems capital and base for the government, diplomats, aid agencies, and hundreds of thousands of displaced people. On the road to Arbat on Monday, a reporter saw people burying a man and covering his grave with driftwood to try to prevent it from being washed away in mudslides. The homes of about 50,000 people were impacted by the flooding. The United Nations said, citing local authorities, adding that the number only accounted for the area west of the dam as the area east was inaccessible. The dam was the main source of water for Port Sudan, which is home to the country's main Red Sea port and working airport, and receives most of the country's much-needed aid deliveries. After the country's election agency rejected the majority of prospective candidates, spectrum, left and Islamist. At least 8 potential challengers have been sentenced to prison or banned from running for office since election season began last month, according to a Human Rights Watch tally. Texas judge has on Monday ordered a temporary pause on a policy that would streamline the process for spouses of U.S. citizens to status in the country. A blow to one of U.S. President Joe Biden's biggest immigration reform policies. Judge J. Campbell Baker granted a 14-day administrative stay in a case brought by the Republican attorneys general of 16 U.S. states challenging the Biden administration's policy. In June, Biden announced a new policy which streamlined a pathway to citizens. The new rules would streamline the process for those who already qualify for permanent residence. The requirement that they leave the country is part of the application process. The rules apply to those in the country for at least 10 years and married to a U.S. citizen before June 17, 2024, and also apply to an estimated 50,000 stepchildren of U.S. citizens. Those approved will be granted work authorization and the right to stay in the United States for up to 3 years while they apply for a green card, which is a pathway to full citizenship. Monday's ruling suspends the granting of these parole-in-place status government from continuing to accept applications from the status. In a statement, U.S. Department of Justice Special Counsel Jack Smith has reports to resurrect the case against former President Donald Trump for allegedly mishandling classified government documents found at his Florida home in 2021. ATN learned that the case was dismissed in July by Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida, a Trump appointee who ruled that the mere existence of special violated the U.S. Constitution. In his request on Monday, Mr. Smith wrote that the judge's view deviated from legal precedent and took an inadequate account of the history of legally appointed special counsels. Trump's legal team has until 26 September to submit a response to Mr. Smith's arguments. Trump had pleaded not guilty to several felony charges in the now-dismissed case, including willful retention of national defense information. The 37-count indictment accused Trump of keeping files at his Florida estate and lying to investigators. It is also alleged that he tried to obstruct the investigation into his handling of the documents. He was charged alongside aide Walt Nutter and former employee Carlos de Oliveira, who had also pleaded not guilty. Mr. Smith's request on Monday defended the appointment of special counsels to a federal appeals court in Atlanta. The filing refers to Congress' endorsement of that practice through appropriations and other legislation. The district court ruled that the Attorney General appointed a special counsel, which was properly founded and valid. The court cited the 1974 case against former President Richard Nixon as proof of the Attorney General's authority to appoint special counsels. The filing argued that Congress has given the Attorney General a broad authority. Trump is facing 4 criminal trials, including the classified documents case, which is unlikely to go to trial before the November presidential election. If Trump wins, experts predict he will dismiss the case. Special counsels have the powers of a U.S. attorney and can prosecute anyone who interferes with their investigation. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Smith to oversee 2 federal investigations into Trump, including the classified documents case and another involving Trump's interference in the 2020 election. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaigns are sparring over whether to mute one of the microphones when it is the other person's turn to speak during the pair's scheduled debates next month. The Harris campaign said in a statement to newsmen that it wanted both candidates' microphones to be live throughout the full broadcast. The Trump campaign reportedly wants the ABC debate scheduled for 10th September to be governed by the same rules agreed when Joe Biden was the Democratic candidate. That would mean the microphones being muted. The apparent impasse comes as the former president questioned the impartiality of the network and signaled he might even skip the debate, according to report. Before President Joe Biden stepped down as the Democratic Party nominee, his campaign agreed with Trump's campaign to participate in 2 debates, one previously held in June on CNN and one to air on ABC News this September. The Biden campaign negotiated the rules for the debates and agreed that the microphone would be muted when a candidate wasn't speaking. The Trump campaign agreed to the rule, which was enforced during the June CNN debate. But now, with just 15 days until the ABC News debate in Philadelphia is scheduled to air, the Harris campaign wants the microphones to be hot, meaning they will never be turned off for the duration of the debate. This would allow the 2 candidates to interrupt and speak over each other on the debate stage. Trump, meanwhile, told reporters on Monday that he would rather have the microphones on during the debate, but said it worked out fine when they were muted on stage with Mr. Biden. Trump's campaign, in a statement to Politico, reiterated the former president's accusation that Ms. Harris was looking to find a way to get out of the debate. Trump has questioned whether ABC News journalists moderating a debate with Hillary Clinton would give questions to the Harris campaign ahead of time. Trump has previously suggested he could back out of a debate, and the Harris campaign has raised $540 million since Biden stepped down, while the Trump campaign raised $138.7 million in July and has $327 million cash on hand. U.S. soldiers Travis King, who fled from South to North Korea before being returned home, will plead guilty to desertion and other charges. His lawyer have said the Army fled 14 charges against Mr. King for the illegal crossing in July 2023. He plans to enter a guilty plea to 5 charges including desertion and assault, which the Army will withdraw and dismiss. His plea and sentencing hearing will take place on 20th of September at a military base in Fort Bliss, Texas. ATN gathered that Travis' guilt plea will be entered at a general court martial. There, he will explain what he did, answer a military judge's questions about why he is pleading guilty, and be sentenced. Charges expected to be dismissed as part of the plea deal include possession of child pornography. ATN learned that Travis has been in the Army since January 2021 and was in South Korea as part of a union restoration. When he crossed into North Korea. Prior to that incident, he had served 2 months in detention in South Korea on charges that he had assaulted 2 people and kicked a police car. He was released from custody on 10th of July, 8 days before he crossed the country's border with Pyongyang. His release deal was brokered by Swedish officials who brought Travis to North Korea's border with China. Little is known about how he was treated in North Korea, why he fled there in the first place, and why Pyongyang expelled him. The U.S. has said it made no concessions to secure his release. Canada has on Monday announced its launching of a 100% tariff on imports of Chinese-made electric vehicles, matching U.S. tariffs imposed over what Western governments say are China's subsidies that give its industry an unfair advantage. The announcement came after encouragement by U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan during a meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and cabinet ministers on Sunday. Sullivan is making his first visit to Beijing on Tuesday. Trudeau said Canada will launch a 30-day consultation about possible tariffs on Chinese batteries, battery parts, semiconductors, critical minerals, metals, and solar panels. The tariffs aim to prevent China's overcapacity and oversupply. The Chinese embassy in Ottawa has defended its decision to import Tesla electric vehicles into Canada, stating that it will damage trade and economic cooperation. The move goes against Canada's traditional image as a global champion for free trade and climate change mitigation. Former Canadian ambassador to China, Guy Saint-Jacques, warned of potential retaliation from China in other industries, including barley and pork. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after this short break. Please do stay with us. over his country's rapidly advancing nuclear program, telling its civilian government there was no barrier to engaging with it in 2018. The U.S. State Department didn't immediately respond to a request for comment over Khamenei's remarks. There have been indirect talks between Iran and the U.S. in recent years, mediated by Oman and Qatar, two of the United States' Middle East interlocutors when it comes to Iran. ATN gathered that surveillance cameras installed by the international agency have been disrupted, while Iran has barred some of the Vienna-based agency's most experienced inspectors. Iranian officials have increasingly threatened that they could pursue atomic weapons. Meanwhile, tensions between Iran and Israel have hit a new high, including East Jerusalem, with 7 of those deaths caused by Israeli settlers. Additionally, 10 Israelis have been killed in attack by Palestinians, in a frequent target of Israel Defense Forces operations in recent months. In April, the Palestinian Red Crescent reported that 14 people were killed during a 2-day Israeli operation. In July, the Israel Defense Forces demolished the main street of the camp, a second reported incident near Bethlehem. Palestinian media stated that dozens of Israeli settlers entered the village of Wadi Rahal and attacked the residents. According to Palestinian officials, the settlers fatally shot a 40-year-old Palestinian man and injured at least 3 others. ATN learned that since Israel's occupation of the West Bank and East, approximately 160 settlements housing around 700,000 Jewish residents. The majority of the international community views this settlement as illegal under international law, although ongoing discussions between the Philippines and the United States regarding the need for a more flexible interpretation of the treaty. Todoro also urged regional nations to confront China, which he labeled as the biggest disruptor of peace in the busy South China Sea. He expressed his confidence that China could be deterred through a unified global stance, saying he believes they are not undeterrable because it's just a question of getting a worldwide consensus. The Defense Secretary has readiness to protect its sovereignty against China's advances. Following recent maritime and air confrontations, U.S. Indo-Pacific Commander Samuel Paparo acknowledged U.S. escorts for Philippine vessels on supply missions, but noted consultations between the two countries. China claims sovereignty over South China Sea, overlapping with other nations. Despite a 2016 arbitration ruling, China continues to deploy vessels to enforce its position, rejecting the tribunal's decision. Australia is set to introduce a limit on new international student enrollments in 2025, limiting the number to 270,000 as part of broader efforts to reduce overall migration to pre-pandemic levels. The decision, announced by Education Minister Jacinth Clare, is intended to address pressures on housing and infrastructure caused by record migration levels, while also improving the quality of the higher education sector. ATN gathered that each higher education institution will be assigned an individual cap, with vocational education and training providers bearing the largest cuts. These moves has been met with fierce opposition from the tertiary education sector, which has labeled it economic vandalism due to the anticipated negative impact on the industry. Australia currently hosts around 717,500 internationals, when strict border controls and the return of foreign students severely impacted enrollments. However, numbers have since rebounded, with international student numbers at universities now 10% higher than before the pandemic, and those at private vocational provider up by 50%. Minister Clare defended the cap, stating that it would help eliminate unethical practices by some providers, including accepting students without sufficient language skills and enrolling individuals who intend to work rather than study. The government has already introduced tougher English language requirements and increased scrutiny on second study visa applications, along with sanctions against crooked providers. The restriction is part of a broader set of reforms aimed at creating a more sustainable and fair education system in Australia. It is also intended to alleviate pressure on housing and infrastructure, which have been exacerbated by high migration levels. The new policy will allow public universities to enroll 145,000 new international students in 2025, maintaining their 2023 levels. Private universities and non-university higher education providers will have a combined cap of 30,000, while vocational education and training institutions will be limited to 95,000 new enrollments. Despite the government's assurances, the higher education sector remains deeply concerned. Critics argue that the cap will have severe economic consequences, with a Sydney University commissioned report warning that the cuts could cost the Australian economy $4.1 billion and result in 22,000 job losses in 2025. Vicky Thompson, chief executive of a body representing some of Australia's most prestigious university, described the proposed laws as draconian and interventionist, stating they amounted to economic vandalism. Addressing concerns about the economic impact, Clare stated that to create the impression that it's somehow tearing down international education as absolutely and fundamentally wrong, as he acknowledged the challenges faced by service providers but rejected claims that the cap would devastate the sector. He then insisted that the reforms would ensure the long-term sustainability of Australia's international education market. Nighttime Russian drone and missile attacks struck across Ukraine, killing at least 5 people on Tuesday, a day after a heavy barrage pounded energy facilities throughout the country. President Volodymyr Zelensky said the attacks included 81 drones as well as cruise ballistic missiles and that 16 people were injured. He said 4 people died, but the governor of the Zaporizhia region later said a 5th person had died. Their flights were called during the night. The regional administration said air defenses destroyed all the drones and missiles, but that failing debris set off forest fires, according to reports. After the Monday barrage across Ukraine of more than 100 missiles and a similar number of drones, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said the energy infrastructure has once again become the target of Russian terrorists and urged Ukraine's allies to provide it with long-range weapons and permission to use them on targets inside Russia. However, President but did not immediately give a public assessment. President Macron denied any political link to Telegram founder Pavel Durov's arrest, stating that the tech tycoon was detained for 2 days due to allegations of illegal content spread on the platform, which has over 900 million users. Durov, a Russian social network founder, was arrested in an ongoing judicial investigation. He is estimated to have a fortune of $15.5 billion. Macron, who denies the allegations, stated that the arrest was part of an ongoing judicial investigation and that it is up to the judges. Late on Monday, French authorities again extended his initial detention for questioning until Wednesday. In recent years, arrived in Paris from the Azerbaijani capital Baku and was planning to have dinner in the French capital, a source close to the case said. Russian social media platform Durov has been arrested in France for alleged criminal activities, including fraud, drug trafficking, cyberbullying, organized crime, and promotion of terrorism. The arrest warrant was issued by France OFMIN, tasked with preventing violence against minors. Telegram, which operates frequently in Europe, denied responsibility for the abuse of its platform and stated that it abides by EU laws and its moderation is within industry standards. Telegram, a neutral alternative to US-owned based platforms, has been accused of hosting illegal content, including extreme sexual imagery, disinformation, and narcotics services. Kremlin spokesman Peskov has not received information from France on Durov's detention. Elon Musk and Tesla CEO Elon Musk have also expressed their support for freedom of expression and communication, stating that these freedoms are upheld within a legal framework. French President Emmanuel Macron has said he will not agree to a government led by the left-wing No Popular Front alliance, which won the most seats in last month's legislative election. Mr. Macron said France needed institutional stability and the left could not win a confidence vote in parliament. The No Popular Front, which put forward the relatively unknown civil servant Lucie Castes as its candidate for Prime Minister, in response called for street protests and Mr. Macron's impeachment. Mr. Macron, whose centrists were beaten to second place in July, said he would start no consultations with party leaders on Tuesday and urged the left to cooperate with other political forces. ATN gathered that no one group was able to win a majority in the elections, with the No Popular Front gaining more than 190 seats. Mr. Macron's centrist Ensemble Alliance 160 and the far-right National Rally 140. A caretaker government has since led France, including during the Paris Olympics, to the anger of the No Popular Front. Mr. Macron has been holding talks on a new government since the election and said he would continue to do so. But he noticeably failed to mention one of the main elements that make up the No Popular Front, the hard left France on board movement. The leftist coalition in France has criticized President Macron's comments, calling them an unacceptable anti-democratic coup. The coalition has refused to participate in future consultations unless Castet's candidacy for Prime Minister is discussed. Ensemble and Aron have pledged to vote down No Popular Front candidates, with former Socialist Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve and center-right Republican Xavier Bertrand also being discussed. And as the International